The night everything changed, I was elbow deep in a stranger's chest cavity, metaphorically speaking, trying to stabilize a 42-year-old man who had decided to have a heart attack in the middle of my shift. That's what I did. I was a trauma surgeon at Mount Sinai Hospital in New York City, and most nights I went home smelling like antiseptic and bad coffee, changed into whatever clean clothes I could find on the floor, and fell asleep to the sound of ambulances 3 blocks away. I didn't have a social life. I barely had a sleep schedule. What I did have was a very patient cat named Biscuit, a studio apartment on the Upper West Side that cost more per month than my mother made in 3, and a reputation in the ER for being the kind of doctor who didn't flinch. So, when the man in the charcoal suit walked into the hospital at 11:15 on a Tuesday night and asked the front desk for me specifically, not any doctor, me, I assumed it was a family member of a patient. It happened sometimes. People wanted to thank you, or yell at you, or ask questions that weren't really questions. But this man wasn't asking questions. He was tall. That was the first thing I noticed, not because I was impressed, but because I am 5'3", and I noticed tall people the way short people always do. He had dark hair going silver at the temples, a jaw like something sculpted rather than grown, and eyes that were doing a very specific kind of scanning. The kind that isn't looking at you, it's assessing you. I'd seen that look before, usually on other surgeons, sometimes on cops, never on a man in a suit that probably cost more than my rent. "Dr. Harlow," he said. Not a question. "That's me," I said. I was still holding my coffee. I was not prepared to stop holding my coffee. "My name is Everett Slade." He paused like the name was supposed to mean something to me. When my expression didn't change, something shifted in his. Not quite amusement, not quite surprise. "I need to speak with you privately. I'm in the middle of a shift." "I know. I'll wait." He said it like waiting was something he chose to do rather than something that happened to him. I looked at him for a long moment, then looked at the nurse at the front desk, who was watching us with the focused attention of someone who was absolutely going to tell everyone about this later. 15 minutes, I said. My break room. He followed me down the hall without another word, which I appreciated. I hate men who fill silence with noise. The break room smelled like burnt microwave popcorn in old takeout containers. I gestured to the plastic chair across from mine and sat down, wrapping both hands around my coffee cup. "What can I do for you, Mr. Slade?" He didn't sit right away. He looked around the room, a quick, almost involuntary scan, then sat, folded his hands on the table between us, and looked at me directly. "My younger brother is getting married in 9 days," he said. "In Charleston. A formal event. 3 days, 140 guests, hotel buyout, the full production." He paused. "I need someone to attend with me as my partner." I set my coffee down. "You're asking me to be your date. I'm asking you to play a role for 72 hours. In exchange, I'll cover your student loans in full." I had $260,000 in student loans. I had not told this man that. I also hadn't told him my name before he used it, hadn't told him where I worked, hadn't told him what shift I was on. The fact that he knew all of this was not comforting. "Why me?" I asked. "You're intelligent, you're credible, you're not easily rattled, and you have no existing connection to my family or my world." He said it like he was reading from a list of qualifications. "I also know you're not the kind of person who talks. And how do you know that?" "Because I did my research. On me. Thoroughly. I should have stood up and walked out. I thought about it. I sat there in the fluorescent light of that break room and genuinely considered standing up, throwing my coffee in the trash, going back to the ER, and pretending this conversation had never happened. But $260,000 was not nothing, and I had 3 years left on my resident salary before I'd make enough to breathe, let alone pay that down. And something about the way this man was looking at me. Not like I was someone he could fool, but like he was trying very hard not to underestimate me, made me stay in my seat. "What exactly does your world involve?" I asked. He held my gaze for a moment. "Real estate development, private equity, international logistics. And the part you're not saying?" Something flickered across his face, almost respect. "Nothing that will put you in danger." That is a very specific answer to a question I didn't quite ask. "Yes," he said. "It is." I looked at him for a long time. Outside the break room, I could hear the controlled chaos of the ER, wheels on linoleum, a monitor beeping, someone calling for a crash cart 3 rooms down. My world. Familiar and exhausting and completely mine. I'll need a week's notice before my shift to arrange coverage, I said. I'm not leaving my patients without backup. Already arranged, he said. Dr. Patel has agreed to cover. She expects a call from you by Thursday. I stared at him. He stared back. Fine, I said. Tell me everything. What he told me was this: his family was complicated. His brother, the groom, was marrying into one of the oldest established families in South Carolina. Old money, old connections, old grudges. His own presence at the wedding was politically complicated within the family, for reasons he described only in outline. He needed to appear settled, established, unimpeachable, a long-term partner, or at least the convincing impression of one, would smooth things over. What he didn't tell me was everything else. I found out some of it over the next 3 days of what he called preparation, which mostly meant dinners at restaurants. I couldn't afford to walk past, learning the names and histories of 50 people I'd never meet, and sitting across from Everett Slade while he tested me on family details, like I was cramming for a board exam. His brother's name was Patrick. The bride's name was Constance. Her father, Harrington, ran a private investment firm that had been in the family for 4 generations. His mother, Vivian, not Everett's mother, the bride's mother, had opinions about everything and voiced all of them. There would be a rehearsal dinner Friday, a garden party Saturday afternoon, the ceremony and reception Saturday evening. Your cover story, he said one night over dinner, setting down his glass of water, is that we met through a mutual colleague 8 months ago. You work demanding hours, which is why we're low profile. You have no interest in social media. You don't discuss your work at social events because of privacy concerns. All of that is true, I said. Exactly why I chose it. I looked at him across the table. In 9 days, I had learned almost nothing about this man, except what he volunteered, and what he volunteered was always precise and always exactly enough. He never gave more than he needed to. He never performed warmth. But he was consistent, and in my experience, consistency was rarer and more valuable than charm. Do you actually want people to believe we're together? I asked. Yes. Then you have to act like it. He looked at me steadily. I'm aware. You have to be present. You can't scan the room when I'm talking to you. You can't sit 18 inches away from me and stare at the exits. A pause. I don't stare at the exits. You've checked the exit of every restaurant we've been in within 30 seconds of sitting down. He was quiet for a moment. Then, force of habit. From what? He picked up his water glass. We leave Thursday morning. I'll have a car at your apartment at 6. End of that conversation. Biscuit was not pleased about the cat-sitter arrangement. I had called my downstairs neighbor, a retired nurse named Mrs. Okafor, who had watched Biscuit twice before and genuinely seemed to enjoy it, though she always pretended it was a burden. I left 3 bags of his specific food, his favorite blanket, and a handwritten note with his schedule, because yes, my cat had a schedule, and yes, I was aware of what that said about me. I packed the kind of clothes I owned exactly 0 of, formal enough for a Charleston wedding weekend, and had gone 2 days earlier with Everett's assistant to a boutique on the Upper East Side where a woman named Teresa had looked at me the way you look at a car you're about to restore and said, very seriously, I can work with this. Everett had paid for everything. I had insisted on keeping a list, because whatever else happened, I was paying him back for the wardrobe. He had looked at the list, said nothing, and filed it somewhere I assumed was the trash. The drive to the airport Thursday morning was quiet in the way I'd started to expect from him. Not uncomfortable, just sparse. His driver, a compact man named Joe, who communicated entirely in nods, took us through the Lincoln Tunnel and up the turnpike, while the sun came up over New Jersey in shades of rust and gray. Charleston is about 90 degrees this time of year, I said, mostly to the window. 93, Everett said. The venue has outdoor events. I've confirmed there are shaded areas. I looked at him. Did you check that for my benefit? He looked straight ahead. The venue sent a weather accommodation briefing. Right, there will be fans and chilled water stations. Everett, he glanced at me. Thank you, I said. He looked back out the windshield. Something in his jaw shifted, almost imperceptibly. "The car service in Charleston arrives at 10, he said. I smiled at the window. The hotel was the kind of place that made you stand in the lobby for a moment and just breathe. High ceilings, wide plank floors, the faint smell of magnolia, and something expensive. The kind of hotel that had a person whose entire job was to carry your bags and remember your name. His family was already there. I knew them before they reached us because I'd memorized the photographs. His mother, Eleanor. Not the bride's mother. His was a slim woman in her late 60s with good posture and better shoes. His brother, Patrick, sandy-haired foreign, nervous-looking in the specific way of men who are happy and afraid of losing it. Constance, the bride, had the confident ease of someone who had grown up knowing exactly where she stood in a room and had decided to be gracious about it rather than insufferable. And then there was the man beside Eleanor, who I had not been briefed on. He was older than Everett, by about 10 years, heavier, with a careful stillness that reminded me of something I couldn't immediately place. He was watching Everett the way you watch something you're trying to predict. Everett's hand found the small of my back, light, steady, not possessive, not theatrical. "Just there. Mom," he said. "You made it." Eleanor's voice was warm, but her eyes went to me immediately. "And this is Leigh Harlow," I said, and smiled and extended my hand. "It's so good to finally meet you. Everett's told me a lot about you." He'd told me almost nothing about her, but she didn't need to know that, and the way she took my hand and squeezed it told me I'd hit the right note. "This is my brother Graham," Everett said. His voice hadn't changed, but something had. Something tightened. "Patrick's and my older brother." Graham Slade looked at me with the kind of attention that makes the back of your neck prickle. "A doctor," he said. "Trauma surgery, long hours. Comes with the territory. I imagine Everett doesn't love that." He was talking to me but watching Everett. "He manages," I said. "He brings very good food when I get home late." Patrick laughed, surprised. Constance's mouth curved. Eleanor looked at her eldest son with an expression I couldn't read. Everett's hand pressed, almost imperceptibly, at my back. We moved into dinner. The thing about performing a relationship is that it's not as hard as people think if you're a good listener. You don't have to fake history. You just have to pay attention. You notice what the other person reaches for first. You notice what makes them go quiet. You learn their tells. Everett's tell was his water glass. When he was thinking something he wasn't going to say, he picked it up. Not to drink, just to hold. At the rehearsal dinner Friday night, he picked it up 6 times in 2 hours, and all 6 times it was when Graham was speaking. I didn't ask about it. Not during dinner. Not during the walk back to the hotel along the waterfront, where the air smelled like the river and the city glittered off the water, and Everett walked beside me close enough that our arms brushed. "You're good at this," he said unexpectedly. I looked at him. "Surgery? This." A gesture between us. "I'm good at paying attention to people," I said. "That's most of what surgery is, actually." "You think it's technical. It's mostly just noticing things before they become problems." He was quiet for a moment. Across the river, a boat moved slowly through the dark water. "Graham is contesting my father's estate," he said. I didn't say anything. I waited. "My father passed away 8 months ago. His will designated the primary holdings to be split between Patrick and me. Graham received a different allocation, real estate in 3 states, which is significant. But he believes there were documents that were changed." He paused. "He's been trying to pressure Patrick to delay the marriage until the estate dispute is resolved." I thought about this. Why delay the marriage? Because Constance's family holds a seat on a board that has interests in one of my father's companies. Once they're family, that changes the legal landscape of the dispute. He looked straight ahead. "Graham knows that, so he needs Patrick and Constance not to get married. Or at least not yet." I looked at the water. "And you being here with a partner removes a specific leverage point he's been using. He's been suggesting to Patrick that I'm not settled, that I'm not thinking clearly, that I have interests that would benefit from the wedding being delayed." He picked up his water glass, metaphorically. I could almost see it. It's not true, but Patrick loves me, and it's been planting doubt. "So I'm evidence," I said. He looked at me then, really looked at me, which he didn't do often enough that it registered when he did. "You're not," he started. I don't mean it as an insult, I said. I'm evidence. I'm Exhibit A in the case that you're a stable, happy person with no ulterior motive. I thought about this. I can work with that. He held my gaze for a moment. You're not what I expected, he said. What did you expect? Someone easier to read. I smiled sorry. The corner of his mouth moved. Not quite a smile, but close. The garden party Saturday afternoon was beautiful and brutal in the 93-degree heat, and I blessed whoever had confirmed the shaded areas and the chilled water stations. Constance's mother, a formidable woman named Barbara, had opinions about every floral arrangement and deployed them with the precision of someone who had survived many events through sheer force of aesthetic will. I liked her immediately. I spent 40 minutes with her talking about the centerpiece hydrangeas, which I knew nothing about but had learned to listen to people who knew things, and she talked and I asked questions, and by the end she had patted my arm twice and called me that sensible girl Everett brought. Across the garden, I saw Graham corner Patrick near the bar. I didn't think. I touched Everett's arm. Your brother, I said quietly. Patrick, 3 o'clock. He found them in under a second. His jaw tightened. He started. Let me, I said. He looked at me. Trust me, I said. I handle family members in crisis every shift. It's different from the outside. Go talk to Constance's father. A pause that lasted exactly long enough for me to think he was going to refuse. Then, don't engage Graham directly. I'm not going to fight him, I said. I'm going to redirect his audience. I crossed the garden at the pace of someone who is going somewhere but isn't in a hurry. I came up next to Patrick and put my hand on his arm. Patrick, I said warmly, I've been looking for you. Constance's aunt just asked me if you've done the toast yet. And I panicked because I realized I have no idea what you're planning, and I've already told 3 people it's going to be wonderful. Patrick blinked, then laughed. The surprised laugh of someone pulled out of a difficult moment. She's been asking me that all week. See, so I wasn't wrong. There's a pattern. Can you tell me what the plan is so I can stop improvising? I kept my hand on his arm, kept my body angled between him and Graham, just slightly. Not blocking, redirecting. Graham watched me. I felt it. I didn't look at him. Patrick, grateful and visibly lighter, steered me toward the other side of the garden talking about the toast, and I listened to every word, and when I glanced back once, Graham was standing alone with his drink. Later, Everett found me by the water station. You redirected him, he said. He needed an exit, I said. He wanted one. I gave him one. Everett looked at me for a moment. Come on, I said. I told Barbara I'd tell her what you think of the centerpiece hydrangeas. I don't have thoughts about hydrangeas. You're about to. The ceremony was in the hotel's main ballroom, and it was beautiful the way things are beautiful when people actually love each other, and you're watching the proof of it. Constance walked down the aisle looking like she knew exactly what she was doing, and was glad about it. Patrick cried quietly, in the way of men who weren't expecting to, and were a little embarrassed and also didn't care. I sat next to Everett and felt him exhale, slowly, next to me when the officiant got to the vows. At some point during the ring exchange, his hand found mine. I don't know which of us did it. It just happened, the way things do when you've been performing something long enough, and somewhere in the performance you forgot to keep track of what was real. I didn't pull away. He didn't either. The reception was loud and warm, and full of people who were genuinely happy, and we ate and danced, and I met at least 40 people whose names I had memorized and whose faces I matched to the photographs. And at some point late in the evening, I found myself on the edge of the terrace with a glass of champagne, alone for the first time all weekend, looking out at the Charleston night. The door opened behind me. Your student loans, Everett said, coming to stand beside me. I had the transfer initiated this morning. I turned to look at him. This morning, before the wedding. The arrangement was fulfilled when you agreed, he said. The payment timing was never contingent on the outcome. I looked at him for a long time. That's not how most people would have handled that, I said. I'm aware. I looked back out at the city. The air had finally cooled, barely, and the sky was the kind of deep navy that happens in the South in summer, thick and full of stars. Graham tried to speak to me this evening, I said, during the cocktail hour. I felt him still beside me. He told me that Everett Slade wasn't a good man, I said. That I should know what I was getting into. That he had documentation suggesting. I paused. He was testing me. Seeing if I'd ask what you had on him, or confirm something, or panic. What did you do? I told him that I'd had exactly 3 conversations with him across the entire weekend and that I was a trauma surgeon, so I had a reasonably calibrated sense of what an emergency actually looked like. I sipped my champagne, and that my boyfriend was the kind of man who called the cat sitter twice to check on Biscuit because he knew I'd be distracted and worried. So my read on his character was pretty settled. Silence. I didn't call the cat sitter, Everett said. I know, I said. I did. I just didn't see the need to tell Graham that. Another silence. Longer. Did you enjoy the wedding? He asked. I thought about it honestly. I did, I said. Patrick is wonderful. Constance is going to be exactly what this family needs. And I got to spend 40 minutes talking to Barbara about hydrangeas, which I will think about for years. You like people, he said. It sounded slightly like a discovery. I got into medicine, didn't I? Some people get into medicine for other reasons. Some people get into real estate development and private equity and international logistics for other reasons too, I said. He was quiet. The music from inside drifted out through the glass doors. My father built the business honestly, he said eventually. Graham disagreed with me with some of the choices he made toward the end. The will reflects those disagreements. He paused. The documents Graham believes weren't changed. But proving that requires access to records that are currently in litigation. It'll take time. And in the meantime, Patrick gets married. And the board situation resolves. Legally, yes. And you needed this weekend to be clean. Yes. I nodded. I thought about the hospital. About the night in the break room under fluorescent light with a man who'd done his research on me. About Biscuit's schedule and the borrowed dress and Mrs. Okafor's dignified pretense of inconvenience. For what it's worth, I said, I don't think Graham is going to stop. No, Everett agreed. He won't. But I think Patrick knows now, clearly, what's happening. I think Constance's family has seen enough to make their own judgments. And I think your mother was watching Graham all weekend, and she's not a woman who misses things. He turned to look at me. Eleanor notices everything, I said. She just decides carefully what she acts on. A long pause. The music changed inside. Something slower. How did you know that? He said. It wasn't a question. I watched her. I finished my champagne. She's like you. She picks up her glass when she's deciding something she won't say out loud. He was still looking at me. You noticed that, he said. I told you. Paying attention to people is most of what I do. Inside, through the glass, I could see Patrick and Constance dancing, the room revolving slowly around them the way rooms do at the right moment of the right night. The car is at 7 tomorrow morning, Everett said. I know. You'll want to call the cat sitter before we leave. Mrs. Okafor is going to tell me about it for months, I said. She loves it. His mouth curved. This time it made it all the way. We stood there a little longer, and the night sat around us, easy and warm, and somewhere between the music and the stars and the champagne and all the things we hadn't said yet. I understood that 9 days ago I had walked into a break room and agreed to something I thought was an arrangement, and it had quietly, without announcing itself, become something else entirely. The door opened and Patrick leaned out, tie loosened, the happiest I'd seen him all weekend. There you both are, he said. Connie wants a photo. All of us, before the night gets away. Everett glanced at me. I set down my empty glass. Come on, I said. It's your brother's wedding. He held the door for me, and I walked back into the warmth and the light, and the noise. And when I looked back, he was right behind me. And there was something in his face that had nothing to do with the arrangement and everything to do with what comes after.